Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives. Definitely check out Macro and Cheese and Real Progress in Action on YouTube. I wanted to talk to you specifically because I saw something so obscene. It was like the quiet part out loud from the military industrial complex. And immediately I said, I need to text Steve and ask him, am I misreading this or are they saying what I'm thinking they're saying? Started with a tweet I saw from Matt Stoller, who covers a lot of antitrust monopoly stuff. He said, Secretary of the Navy to big defense firms, you can't be asking the taxpayer to make greater public investments while you continue to goose your stock prices through stock buybacks, deferring promised capital investments, i.e., weapons, and other accounting maneuvers. Okay, so I click on the link. Opinion, stock buybacks in defense. What drives them and how can that change? Okay. Recent comments by U.S. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro have reigniting a long-running issue of contention between the Pentagon and the management of the largest publicly traded defense prime contractors, stock buybacks. Specifically, senior DoD officials have raised concerns when companies that are doing business with DoD use remaining capital to buy back their existing shares of company stock in lieu of additional investments in research and development or production capacity. The comments that they are referring to that were made by the U.S. Navy Secretary are from February. U.S. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro has a message for government contractors. Ask not what you can do for your shareholders, ask what you could do for your country. Speaking at the West Naval Conference in San Diego on February 15th, Del Toro, a former businessman, said that in a time of war abroad and political uncertainty at home, the U.S. needs companies to deliver weapons, warships, aircrafts, and more on time, on budget, and without excuses. Quote, you can't be asking the American taxpayer to make even greater public investments while you continue, in some cases, to goose your stock prices through stock buybacks, deferring promised capital investments, and other accounting maneuvers that, to some, seem to prioritize stock prices that drive executive compensation rather than making the needed fundamental investments in the industrial base in your own companies at a time when our nation needs us to be all ahead flank. Let's first get to the American taxpayer part of this. I believe he's telling the defense contractors that have purchased the government enough stock buybacks, more weapons quicker, more weapons quicker, with the fallacy that the American taxpayers are paying for these weapons. Your thoughts?
That's part of it. Getting rid of the taxpayer fallacy, which is a fallacy. If you read deeper into that, you'll understand that what happens is the government puts out RFPs, requests for proposal, and they have pre-bid contracts that a lot of these larger groups are part of. They just go ahead and they can submit a bid for whatever it is the government's asking. And a lot of times these larger ones will get in because they got very low cost of capital. They're able to get in and out really quickly. The problem is they're very, very fat and wealthy, and they don't move for anything. So the idea of them increasing their profits as an incentive to get them to meet and beat objectives from the government is kind of what they're trying to get at here. Biden, since day one of taking office, has been ratcheting up a Cold War with China. Going back to the State of the Union address, he spoke specifically to it. We've been dealing with a Cold War with Russia, even though it hadn't been called that up until recently. Now we are approaching a Cold War rhetoric and a Cold War investment that goes back to Ronald Reagan times and even before, quite honestly. So the idea is to tell people, hey, the CHIPS Act, that CHIPS Act fundamentally funded a lot of these military contractors because chips are a large part of the computerized weapons that we use today. And so CHIPS gave them tons of money, gave lots of money to it. And they're saying, hey, listen, we did these bills, we spent this money on you, but instead of using it to actually innovate for the war machine, you're instead using it to shrink your stock base, increase the price per stock, and give huge parachutes to your executives, huge profit off of public money. Now, it is not the taxpayer dollar, but this is an important thing. I say this, and now we're going to put like this is praxis, okay? Government submits a bill out or submits a bid or a request for proposals. All these companies apply for it. One of them gets granted. The government spends that money into existence right then and right there. And they're saying, hey, man, it's one thing to do this when we're not at war, but now that we're in this Cold War and we're got all these other military things going on, hey, man, it looks really bad if you guys are making billions and not producing any new technology and not innovating, not anything else. And so that's his message. But I think it's really important to understand that our government isn't encumbering them to follow any rules. They're sternly saying, hey, we'd like you not to engage in any buybacks, while the CHIPS program and the IRA, all these different programs that Biden pushed through during COVID, that you don't abuse these things in such a way that fattens your bottom line. Instead, you need to be making sure that our men and women in harm's way are getting the weapons they need. And that doesn't just mean yesterday's weapons. That means constantly doing research and development, innovating new things for the war machine to always be ahead of everyone else. Because most of the weapons we sell, not only to Israel, but around the world, are second, third, fourth generation stuff that we no longer use, that are outdated. And that's what we sell off to the rest of the world. So that's what they're talking about.
And, what I found particularly insidious about this, and, Dwight Eisenhower obviously warned of this, but really what he's saying is it's not just the optics that look bad, forgetting the whole taxpayer fallacy, because obviously we've talked about this many times. In the heyday of the Afghanistan war, the generals on the ground were being told to spend $300 million a day. Let me repeat, $300 million a day. There's not enough Americans and taxpayer base to cover that over 20 years. So they were printing the money. It wasn't our taxpayer dollars paying for that. Anyway, but really what he's saying is, hey, we've built a war economy. So you diverting the money in many ways that we are giving you for free, because we give plenty of subsidies to these defense contractors, you diverting that to stock buybacks is moving away from, yes, research and development, et cetera, but weapons making, which greases your stocks, but also is our economy in many parts of the country. So, this is part of the deal. We give you all this money. We let you purchase us and buy us off as government officials, but you got to keep speeding up these weapons. We got to be creating new fears, new threats against America, so that the weapons keep being made at quicker paces, at bigger proportions. Now with the CHIPS Act, AI, a lot of Israel's bombs and drones are AI intelligence, in part from us. So it seems that they're saying, hey, you're diverting this money to your stock buybacks rather than putting it back into our economy.
That's exactly what they're saying. And just remember this, it's really important. If the government gets money into the economy by spending, and they spend it on defense contractors, and those defense contractors aren't investing it in jobs in the defense industry, and they're not investing it in projects that employ workers, then it's just being held at the top for the rich once again. Okay. And that is the de facto American way with both Republicans and Democrats. Sorry, folks, it's just true that they ultimately is about getting money to the public through spending on defense contracts, because they will not ever, they'll never come out and say, here, have health care. Why? Because that would eliminate the insurance industry that they're on the hook for. It would eliminate all these other things that they don't want to eliminate, because those people fatten their wallets too. So they're always going to invest in the military. It's always going to be military Keynesianism until we decide that it's not going to be a rise up and take the power back. But I mean, look at what they're doing. They're inventing weapons on the daily with public money that make whatever we might do to fight back and resist their behavior pretty deadly proposition, domestically as well as abroad. So I think it's important to note that this isn't just about innovating. This is about control on the homeland and control around the world. And it's also about the aspirations and dreams of the power brokers that run the U.S. government. So,
right. And I also think, the bottom line is, and this is, I'm saying this specifically towards more maybe moderate conservative voters, because I'm not telling anything to progressives or lefties that you don't know, but to the moderates or the conservative leaning who keep buying this nonstop Republican libertarian nonsense about, our defense has been battered. Our defense has been weakened under, Obama or Biden, or, we're not strong anymore. What the U.S. Navy, whatever his position, is basically saying, we got to keep the mirage up. We got to keep inventing threats. We got to keep inventing enemies so that we could keep greasing the skids for the war machine, i.e. the economy. And you'll be fat, we'll be fat, because said U.S. Navy, whoever said this, is likely going to end up on some of their boards when he leaves the government, because that's how it goes. I mean, all of these Pentagon people, when they leave government, end up on Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon's boards, other security firms, and then there's a pipeline to CNN and Fox News and MSNBC where they have nice contractor gigs where it's not disclosed that they are on the boards. I mean, it's one giant cesspool. But I'm saying to the conservative viewer, the moderate viewer, it's not to say there's never a threat to the homeland. That would be simplistic. But this is just basically saying this is a war industry, and we got to keep up the theater that there's a threat. So stop buying back your own stock during all these wars.
In 1982, the SEC removed the restriction from stock buybacks, another gift of the Reagan deregulation. Okay. And in that
meaning it was once illegal to buy back your stock.
We've always known it because it's stock manipulation. This is Wall Street manipulation. This is, hey, we know that we're going to buy back these stocks, and that's going to immediately shrink the number of stocks for sale and immediately increase the yield on those stocks. So the stocks we own will rise precipitously high because we aren't going to sell our own stock when we do the buybacks. It's just going to be the other people outside that we're going to buy theirs. But something else really important. The U.S. government back in the day used to be its own producer of weapons, used to be its own research and development, used to do all the things that we're now seeing been privatized. Fancy that, another neoliberal part of this whole picture. And the privatization scheme of all the defense contractors, et cetera, means that our quote unquote boys and girls in the field, the men and women in the field, okay, are literally at the mercy of a capitalist profit motive, whether it be quality, whether it be speed to production, whatever it is. The very idea that we're defending our soldiers, okay, by allowing a capitalist to profit off of this stuff, and when they don't feel the profit is high enough, withholding their services, is a sign, number one, Boeing, Lockheed, all these other groups are too big. They need to be broken up. They're monopolies now. They need to be broken up, okay, and made so that they are hungry once again, because where they're at now is basically unearned capital. They are literally rentiers. They're not developing things to make money anymore. This is really a matter of them banking on the idiocy of the red, white, and blue, these colors don't run types, hoping and praying that they keep thinking that we're protecting our freedoms and we're fighting for our men and women in combat in harm's way, while simultaneously sucking every bit of life, figuratively and literally, out of the system.
Absolutely. And kind of makes you think, based on these statements, what's the real reason we're supporting this genocide, Israel on Gaza? The continued Ukrainian-Russia war. I mean, Yemen, Somalia. I mean, we could go on and on and on. If we had peace, what are these companies going to do?
It ain't
and
profitable.
Right. So saying the quiet part out loud. Steve, where can people find your work?
Please check us out at realprogressives.org. And on Saturday mornings, 8 a.m., we release our podcast, Macro and Cheese, available on all podcast platforms. And please check out our YouTube channel, Real Progress in Action, and sister channel, Real Progressives.
God bless. Thank you.